Hey everyone, it's Erica Labuzan-Lopez. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and licensed professional counselor in League City, Texas. And today I'm continuing in my series on marriage during COVID-19. So it's really about relationships during COVID-19, right? I did post some questions on social media over the last few weeks asking for questions, ask me anything, what are things going on in people's relationships that they really want information about. So we've gone through some of these questions before, and I'm continuing down my list of topics. And so if you do have more questions or different things that you want to know about, please leave that in the comments below, and I'll add it to my list of videos to make. I am kind of new to YouTube, so I would really appreciate if you go ahead and subscribe. And if you find this helpful, please go ahead and share it on any of your social media so that more people can get the information. I would like to reach as many people as I can because I think that these are really important topics and relevant to what's going on in our current state of affairs. So the question I got from a mom's group is about anxiety. And the question read, how can I help my partner with their very heavy anxiety? So I am going to have a companion blog post that goes along with this. It's going to explore completely different topics than what I'm talking about today. I would suggest that you follow the link. I'll leave it in the description and check out that blog post. I'm going into quite a bit of detail, giving some background about how anxiety works and how you can better understand it so that you don't accidentally feed into your partner's anxiety, because that's something I see happen a lot in normal circumstances and in our current circumstances. So I would highly suggest checking that out. It goes into a bit of a deep dive on some different topics. But I thought for the video it would be helpful to keep it more to communication skills and some practical things that you can use right away. So number one, use I statements. So this is something I do with all my couples all of the time. I can't think of a single couple that we haven't reviewed this at one point or another. I statements are really important. When we start our sentence with the word you, it automatically puts the other person on the defensive. They feel like you're attacking them, even if that's not your intention or you didn't mean it in a negative way. It is really hard to overcome that initial reaction of defensiveness. It just brings people's guards up right away, right? And so pretty much their only choice is to respond in a way that feels defensive, and then the situation can escalate, right? Because they didn't even really hear what you said. All they heard was that, oh, you're attacking me? Well, here we go, and I'm gonna bring everything back. So even if it doesn't escalate in a fight, it's just not really very productive, and it's not a good way to help your partner with their anxiety. So in the blog post, I did explore how hard it is to have a partner who has anxiety, and I want to spend a moment recognizing that too. Like, this is a difficult experience for you to hold all of that energy, right? And all of that weight of what your partner is going through. So I do want to spend a second on that. That's totally normal. So it makes sense that you might say something like, you worry too much, right? Because you're looking at it. You can see the situation in a bit of a different way than your partner can. You're probably looking at it with a bit more logic or reasoning, or just from a different perspective, right? There's no judgment there. It's just different. You see it differently. And so I think it makes sense that you're trying to help your partner, and I think it makes sense to go into it saying, you need to do this. Don't worry about that. You should do X, Y, Z. Try taking a walk, all the things, right? Like putting that back into their own power maybe, or kind of putting that back towards them. And I don't think it's a bad strategy. I do think we have to be careful about how we're going to go about talking about that. So I prefer for people to keep their feedback in I statements. Like I said, this is all the time with any issue that pops up. I think it's so important. So instead of saying, this is driving you crazy, you worry too much, you're too worried, which is something that I've heard quite a bit over these last few weeks. We could just flip that a little bit, right? So an I statement might be, I'm concerned that your worry is starting to wear on your mental health, right? I'm concerned that this amount of worrying is taking a toll on you. I'm concerned about your well-being. I'm fearful that this anxiety is going to wear you down. It's going to be, it's just going to be too difficult. You know, can you work with me? There are other ways that we can think about this. And so for me, that's going to be an important shift. Saying, I'm concerned about the toll this is taking on you feels totally different to the person receiving that feedback than you're just worrying too much. Like, you're just worrying too much. That is gonna spark a defensive reaction. And as I explore in the blog post, you may be inadvertently heightening their anxiety when you do things like that. So I'll go into some more explanation about that in, like I said, written form. But we just don't want to add anything extra or give that person further reasoning that their anxiety holds truth. We want to be able to make sure that we're looking at that in an intentional way. What is a real threat versus what is a perceived threat? And the more that we have them challenging their own thoughts in that type of way, in a defensive way, in a need to prove that their fear is true, it reinforces that a fear is true, which it may or may not be. We need to take a different look at that. So just go ahead and shift that verbiage just a little bit, right, into how are you perceiving and what is your emotion regarding the amount of anxiety that your partner is feeling, and how can you communicate that to them? So I'm worried, I'm scared, I'm nervous. All of those things might be good ways to start those I sentences. My second thought is around making specific requests. So that's something like maybe your partner is very anxious when you go to the grocery store and they call you 7 times to see where you are. That might be where they are, right? That might be a reasonable reaction given the level of anxiety that they're at. However, that might also be extremely burdensome to you, and you could be forming some feelings or resentments towards your partner for that level of intrusiveness into your own time, that level of checking up on you. Like, there's so much that can pop up there. Maybe it doesn't bother you at all, and you don't need to make a request about it. But I think for a lot of people, that could start to feel overwhelming for you to take on that level of anxiety, right? And this could look a million different ways. We'll just use this example for the sake of the video. So instead of saying, stop calling me, please, and also not just sitting in it, not just allowing that behavior to continue, because again, you may be inadvertently reinforcing your partner's anxiety about something that way. Like I said, totally not your fault. It's just that may be what's happening within that cycle. So instead, I would make a specific request that might look something like, hey, instead of calling me so many times to assure my safety, I will text you when I get there and I will text you when I leave. Can you work on your own relaxation techniques for the time that I'm gone? And can you put trust in me that I will communicate with you about what's happening? So that's a good way to do it, right? And also giving them the empowerment that they need to be able to work on some of these things on their own, that you don't have to be the person that's going to ease or manage their anxiety, that they're actually able to do that for themselves. My third tip is around empathy. And again, this may feel burdensome to you if you're not used to talking to your partner in this way, or you're not used to thinking about things in this way. But I really think this is going to get you a lot farther in these conversations with your partner who's highly anxious and that their anxiety is weighing on them in a very heavy way. And the reason being that sometimes when people feel that they are not understood, especially regarding something like anxiety or other emotions, that they will continue to discuss it until they feel like you understand them. They will repeat it, they will talk about it in a different way. And again, this is making that anxiety feel more real for them, right? They feel like this is real. Why are you not seeing it the same way that I'm seeing it? And it's going to continue on and on and on until they feel that you've understood them. So expressing empathy is going to be really important. It doesn't mean that you have to agree with them. You don't have to agree that their anxiety is based in reality. You don't have to agree that it is a real threat, whatever it is that they're talking about. You don't have to agree with how often they're thinking about things. You don't have to agree with any of that. Empathy is not agreeing with somebody. It is stepping into their shoes in a way, and helping them know that you understand how hard it is to do that. So, one way that you can do that is just literally kind of sitting there, closing your eyes, and thinking, how hard would it be to have these anxious thoughts? Again, whether you agree with them or not, right? How hard is it to have this level of anxiety sitting in your body all day long and feeling like you can't move through it or process it? It would be really hard. It's affecting you as their partner, right? Like, you're taking on quite a bit of that. But it's also really hard on them, and I think trying to make sure that we're stepping out of our own box and connecting with our partner in that way. So some phrases that would communicate empathy would be, that's gotta be hard, right? Like, this has gotta be so hard on you to hold all of this energy all day. It must be draining, right? It must be exhausting that you've had 5,000 thoughts about this news article in the past 30 minutes. I can't imagine what that's like, but I know that it would be tiresome, burdensome, and I'm sorry that you have to take that on. I'm sorry that you are taking that on, might be a better way. And so then they kind of feel a little calmer, right? Already just from you saying that. It's not that they're crazy. It's not that that their anxiety is not based in reality. It's not that it's unreasonable. It's not that it's all these things. It's not that it's bothering you. It's that you understand that it must be hard. And I think that once you express that, and once they feel like you've understood and you get what they're going through, even just a little bit, again, you don't have to agree, right? But you get it and you see them. I think you'll notice a very quick shift in how they're able to calm their nervous system and calm their energy. And all of a sudden they can open up into other ways of thinking about things, right? Like, maybe this isn't the healthiest way in reality, and now they can actually see that. My fourth tip is around treating your partner with kid gloves. I really recommend, especially right now, that we don't treat our partners with kid gloves, and sometimes that's a go-to for a lot of people because they just don't know quite how to deal with it, and they don't want to further upset their partner. So they think if they say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing or are not supportive, or that can look like so many things, they start to almost patronize in a way. I think that that's something that can happen, but they just treat their partner like they can't handle things, so they might start shielding them from news articles, or they might not tell them all of their own fears about what's going on. They might not communicate or be vulnerable with them. They might just feel the need to keep scary things out of that person's awareness. And I understand the thought behind that. I really do. Like, I understand why we might go into that mode of thinking. However, I think it can be just flat out unhelpful, unproductive. I would say it could even go into the dangerous realm, right? Because what if you put yourself into a situation that you felt was unsafe and you didn't communicate that with your partner because you didn't want to upset them, and now there's just a lack of awareness and almost a lack of trust. So I've seen this in clients throughout the years have a very bad consequence when we feel like we're protecting our partners. You're not protecting them by not telling them the truth and not telling them where you are and not telling them what's going on, right? Or trying to shield them. It's just not helpful, and it makes things worse. So I really encourage you to keep that in mind. You can even play it in your mind as a mantra. I'm not going to treat my partner with kid gloves. They're an adult. They're my partner. We're equals, and I'm going to show them respect by letting them handle their own anxiety, and I'm going to be in the role of support for them. So that's going to be really important, and it's definitely going to take some practice on your part, right? And shifting a little bit of that mindset if that's something you found yourself doing. My last tip is about open-ended questions. So sometimes we've been with our partners for so long that we think we know everything about them, right? Or we know everything about their anxiety or everything about how they're going to handle certain situations. But the truth is we don't always know. And sometimes we've been making assumptions over the years that are not accurate and are not true, and may not be true in the current situation. So I would encourage you not to prescribe things upon your partner, or not to put your own perspective about how people experience anxiety or how your partner experiences anxiety onto them, I think people will surprise you. A crisis can sometimes throw people into a whole different place than they've ever been. So you may have an anxious partner who is handling this pretty well. You may have a partner who's never experienced anxiety in their life, having panic attacks over certain things. You know, there's just a realm of like a huge range of responses that are going on that you may or may not fully understand. And so, you know, sometimes I find, especially if the mood is elevated or there's some tension or conflict already in some of these discussions about it, and, you know, then we come with, well, you know, I don't really think it's helping you watch the news. Do you think that that's helpful? Do you think that that's going to get you somewhere? You know, we start kind of doing this sort of baiting type of questioning, right? Or we've already come into it. I know that you're watching the news is, you know, going to throw you into a panic attack. Well, maybe, you know, but maybe not. And so I think that's where it's asking that open-ended question, which is not a yes or no answer, right? Do you think this is helpful? You know, maybe yes, maybe no, but that's still not giving you the information that you actually need, which is perhaps this is helpful in such and such way, but maybe it's harmful in these other ways, and that's too multifaceted of a question to explore with a yes or no answer. And so let's open that up. And how is exposing ourselves to the news helpful, and how might it not be helpful? Are there other ways that we could go about getting the information? What are your thoughts about that? Like, can we work together on a plan for going to the grocery store? What's an ideal schedule for our week? You know, there's so many things, but just make sure that when you're asking the question, it's not a yes or a no, which would be a closed-ended question, or, you know, a very short, direct answer, but more in the approach of we're just going to explore these things together, and we're going to be open to different thoughts and different ideas, because I don't want to come in already assuming I know what my partner is thinking. That's not going to help their anxiety, and it's not going to help me to deal with their anxiety if I don't really truly understand it, which is going to make it harder to do all these other things that I'm saying, right? It's going to make it harder to have an accurate I statement or to make a request that makes sense that they can do. It's definitely going to make it harder to empathize with them, and it's going to put us in a position where we feel like we can't allow them freedom, and we're going to start treating them with those kid gloves. So very, very important. Keep those questions open. View this time period as an exploration, because we're certainly doing that with every other aspect of our life, right? We're exploring how to be at home together. We're exploring how to teach our kids school and what are the most important things, and how are we going to spend our time and our days getting through this really hard situation. So those are some of my tips. Very easy, I shouldn't say easy, very simple things, but not always easy to implement, and not always going to be successful. So I would encourage you to practice them. You know, you're not going to always get it right, but your partner is always not going to get it right either. You know, they're going to have some thoughts and responses to some of this. You're changing the way that you've been interacting, I imagine, by using some of these techniques. And so it's going to be important to have compassion and grace for yourself and for your partner. So like I said, please put your questions below. If you want any more specifics on any of these techniques, I can go into more detail. If you have a different question about your relationship, I would love to know. Could be related to COVID-19 or anything else. I have a running list going, and so can't wait to share my next video with you guys. Bye.